Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Aspen City Council work session for 2024. We have one item on our agenda tonight that is Psilocybin Proposition 122 law update. Yes, sir.
Esteemed Assistant City Attorney Louisa Byrne will handle this matter.
Trying to share my PowerPoint. Javier, could you help me?
Just as a brief introduction, memo this brought about by Senate 2290 following Proposition 122, state approved or approved item called the Natural Medicine Act of 2022. Lisa can take it up.
Good afternoon, Council. What we're here to discuss is, does the City of Aspen wish to impose its own place and manner restriction on natural medicine businesses?
Pardon me for 1 second.
No problem.
And I just got a message from him that audio is not working. He asked if we can hear him. He can hear us. So let's see if we can just get him on a screen. Ward, are you there now? Do you hear us?
Ward rings.
The remote behind your laptop.
Thank you.
There he is.
All right, we can see you. We do not hear you. All right, but you've got audio from us, a thumbs up. Thank you. We'll try to figure out why we can't hear you, but shall we get started? Thank you.
All right, so the reason why I'm starting with the question presented is that I would love it if you guys thought about it while I did my presentation, because it's pretty simple, but it also requires a little bit of thought. So we have Proposition 122, which was the access to psychedelic substances, which was passed by Colorado voters in November of 2022. It allows for psilocybin to be legal for treating mental health issues. And once again, what local governments can do is they can regulate the time, place, and manner of natural medicine businesses, but local governments can't prohibit them. So Colorado Senate Bill 23290 amended the act and created the regulatory and licensing framework for the natural medicine businesses in Colorado, and the licensing framework has gone live now, and it's codified at CRS 12170-104 and CRS 4450103 if anyone wants to look it up and read through the extremely exciting Colorado code regarding it. So what is natural medicine? It's commonly known as magic mushrooms or shrooms. I refrained from putting any funny psychedelic looking graphics, but this is what we're talking about today. So natural medicine is defined as psilocybin, as well as, if approved by the state later in time, diaphragmine and something I can't pronounce, and mescaline, but those are not legalized as of right now. And a natural medicine product means a product infused with natural medicine that is intended for consumption. So really, we are talking about mushrooms and derivatives of mushrooms at this point. So just a quick overview of the state legislation. It allows a person over the age of 21 years old to possess, share, and cultivate and manufacture certain regulated medicines for personal use without payment. So this has been legal for since the act was enacted. I think a year and a half it's been legal. So an important thing to remember is that the without payment goes along with the businesses as well. It also creates a state licensing program for natural medicine businesses with certification and permitting and registration and requirements. There's an advisory board for the 5 types of business licenses. And so the 5 types of licenses that people can hold are healing centers, cultivation facilities, manufacturers, testing facilities, and facilitator licenses. So just to understand, a facilitator license would be like a therapist who provides psilocybin for their client. They could charge for their therapy session, but they cannot charge for the psilocybin. It's just a quick summary of the rules, and this is kind of the important one, is that it's 1,000 feet from any childcare center, school, high school, residential childcare facility. So it can't be, so our liquor code just requires people to be 500 feet from a school. This includes childcare centers as well for any of the cultivation, manufacturing, testing, storing, distribution, transportation, dispensation of regulated natural medicine and related products. But much like when you go and buy a bottle of wine, we don't really have a way to regulate people who are doing it at home by themselves. So per state law, there's 4 types of natural medicine businesses: natural medicine healing centers, natural medicine cultivation facilities, natural medicine product manufacturers, and natural medicine testing facilities. And these are what we can regulate with the time, place, and manner regulation. So our ability is very narrow. So what can local governments do? They can enact ordinances or regulations governing time, place, and manner. You guys are gonna get really tired of hearing me say time, place, and manner by the end of this, by the way. Of operation of natural medicine businesses issued licenses pursuant to the Colorado Natural Medicine Code within its boundaries. Can regulate where the city natural medicine businesses may operate, including restricting further the allowed distance from schools. So we can increase that if we wanted it to be 2,000 feet. Can regulate the times that natural medicine businesses may operate. Although not required to take action, local governments may enforce these limited local regulations. So here's what we can't do, which gets a little more difficult. We can't prohibit the establishment or operation of licenses or prohibit the operation of establishments entirely within the city. So we can't pass a regulation that would essentially ban them. Can't prohibit the transportation of natural medicine or natural medicine products within its boundaries. This includes into and out of the city. Cannot adopt ordinances or regulations that unreasonably conflict with state law. And local governments cannot create their own local licensing regime. So in this case, unlike our LLA, our Liquor Licensing Association, the licensing is solely a function of the state. So here are the links to the FQAs for the state of Colorado. So if you're looking for more information about this, there is a plethora of it. The state has actually done a really amazing job with its frequently asked questions and with providing a lot of educational material. So at this point, staff is requesting direction from City Council as to whether you wish to pursue a time, place, and manner regulation on natural medicine businesses. And if the answer is yes, then here are kind of the 3 things that it would be helpful to think about. What areas of the city should be off limits to natural medicine businesses? Is 1,000 feet from a school enough? And what types of time restrictions would council like to see?
Time meaning
Like-
operation?
Yes, like time of, 9 to 5, like that sort of time.
Until 4 in the morning, right?
Any questions?
Sam?
Well, I think the 2 biggest things I can think of is, have other cities set precedent on these questions?
So this has obviously been, and I don't know if you read my memo regarding this, this has been a very hot topic with other cities. The only city, I believe right now, that has currently acted ordinance is Parker, Colorado, and it's restricting them to, I believe, a specific zone district. Boulder is still working and taking public comment. Castle Rock was all set to go with an ordinance and then put everything on hold, and I don't know if they're going to regulate anything at this point.
They're having that discussion. I was just with that city manager.
perfect.
They're having them next, right after Thanksgiving.
Oh, great. So almost all the cities I think around the state are in our position right now, which is considering what they want to do.
Got it. And the way you described that, I'm trying to visualize, say we restricted to like the downtown core. What are the odds any of these would pop up outside of that zone anyway?
Well, I think that there's, and I see that working as well.
Yeah.
I think that there's a possibility that may happen because the facilitators of this type of medicine could have home practices, right? Like a lot of therapists and psychologists do work from their home. So there is a concern that people may decide to run their business out of their home.
That's
So it
fair.
is a possibility, to answer your question.
And the last thing, just because you mentioned school, has there been any consultation board or anyone at the school?
No, this is the first step, is to see if you guys want to start regulating, if you guys want to take the step for us to come up with a potential ordinance for this.
Okay. And then lastly, because I just thought of it, what other, is it like Oregon that still has this legalized, and have they set precedent even if Colorado's new to the game?
They have, and I did review very closely their regulations, but I'm very happy to dig down into what season Oregon had. But their licensing scheme is a little bit different than ours. It's actually less regulated. The state of Colorado put a lot of effort into creating a very tight licensing scheme for natural medicine and facilitators.
Is there another apples to apples
Oregon, I
comparison?
believe, is the only other one at this point.
Okay. For me, and I'll listen to what everyone's just curious about the other precedents set and whether that's worked or not, because I very much feel like I have a lack of knowledge for what makes sense in the situation.
All right, Ward, let's try that on.
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thank you. I'll lower my hand then. Thank you for the presentation. I think Boulder and Denver have had similar decrim actions prior to the Senate bill. And I just point out this, it does say for medical use, it's not a recreational use that's permitted, or it's decriminalizing recreational use, but the encouragement is for medical use. And I think the word that you couldn't pronounce, Lisa, was EMA. Which I think is close to being deregulated by the federal government of all of the other listed substances. I feel that as far as some of the questions, that ground floor use should be allowed. It should be only in a safe environment with licensed practitioners in the state of Colorado does set those licensing provisions. So we have guidance there. So what I would like to see is, it's an 87-page bill. I'd like to see what the licensing are. It has, psilocybin has been proven to be effective for a number of medical ailments, mental health, chronic pain, PTSD, addictive behavior. There have been a couple of seminars at the Wheeler Opera House that have pointed out the effective uses with panel discussions. But it also is in the bill, it's for natural, not use. So what this really is doing is trying to prevent the pharmaceuticals from coming in and creating their own synthesized psilocybin and take control of the distribution and sale and marketing of psychedelics. And there's also, I think Atlantic Magazine had a good article about psilocybin as non-psychedelic and psychedelic, that there's a distinction between microdosing and taking a dose that will actually cause a cognitive shift. So for me, I want more information on the scene. I think 1,000 feet away from the school's at. I know there are a lot of practitioners that do work in our homes, but I think it should be in a commercial zone. I'm concerned with that some get a hold of psilocybin and they're not supervised and they go wacko and disturb the neighborhood. I think that they should be clinically supervised, and I think that's what the licensing really facilitates. Is that it's a medical that's facilitated by somebody that is trained and is in the presence of a therapist during the period of time that they're under the influence of the psilocybin. Oregon had a year lead into it, Sam, and I'm not sure they fully. I'm not sure what their process is now, and I would like to see that before we go into setting up regulations. But cannabis is legal in Colorado. And Francis, a number of times has been asked that we set a place for safe consumption. You can buy cannabis in town, but all hotels are no smoking, and there's no place to legally consume cannabis. At least with alcohol, you can take it in a bar, you can take it in, take it home. But I think that we should allow the use of and experience of psilocybin and other substances in a clinical setting with a therapist that's coaching you. I think that was the question is the transfer. You mentioned that it's not, you can't sell it, but Denver has for a couple of years, you can get the spores, you can cultivate it, but once it gets to a point where then it becomes illegal. So how is it transferred? So if you don't have a clinician overseeing the use of psilocybin, how are they going to get the psilocybin? Is a friend of theirs puts it in their basement or aquarium or however they grow it and just gives it to them? But it's finding that the state says you can transmit it, but you can't. It's like Hunter Thompson back in the day said it should be illegal for everybody to sell drugs for profit.
So just to be clear, there is a requirement in the legalization of psilocybin in Colorado that it be administered by a clinician. So that was the first part of Proposition 122, you just have to be 21. So what we're able to regulate are the positions, and so there is no, like I said, there's no, you can't sell it. Makes it sort of interesting how testing and manufacturing facilities are going to stay afloat. But, and we also can't restrict the transportation of it, so it can be moved freely out of the state.
You know the transportation, but the transmission and transfer. So a healing center and facilitator are both indications that they should be under the guidance of a psilocybin licensed facilitator.
Yep, so these are the types of licenses that the state is issuing. So the state is issuing these 5, which include a facilitator license and healing center licenses. And facilitators can charge for their time, like their therapy session, but they cannot charge for the actual psilocybin. And facilitators are restricted to licensed social workers, MDs, psychologists, psychiatrists, and so there's actually a pretty significant training regime that goes along with it, and it requires pretty significant educational qualifications. So that is one limitation when it comes to guiding the psilocybin therapy sessions.
I'm well aware of that, and in Oregon, they have the same thing, but if we were gonna do anything with this, I wanna have a full briefing on, because I would, in the strongest possible way, encourage the people that people that are taking psilocybin for medical reasons, that they are coached and have a licensed therapist coach them through the process. And you know, there's a term, I think, reintegration would come in layman's term, when you come down to be able to reintegrate into your surroundings. So, but there are times when people shouldn't be taking psilocybin if you haven't had any screening beforehand. And if you have had screening and you have a bad trip, you need somebody there to push you back to this world.
Yeah, go.
Thanks, Lisa. The types of licenses and how they apply to your question, I do think that we should be involved in regulation for a couple reasons. One is there's a good chance that this is a first step from state licensure, just like we saw with cannabis. So it's not intended to be a retail recreational business yet, and maybe it becomes that at one point in time. But if that's not the intent on the state level, then we shouldn't allow it to become that, which I think could easily become, just because you cannot charge for the psilocybin itself doesn't mean you can't charge for a cookie and give away the psilocybin, just like you mentioned. And I did see that happening in Oregon, and I think Denver, I've even seen it happening. So it's a clear precedent that will happen. And I don't think we want to encourage retail storefronts for the sale of quasi-recreational psilocybin at this point. So I like the suggestion of office use restrictions zoning, but for healing centers and facilitators, I'm not sure about testing facilities, where that really belongs, because I don't know what the testing process involves, but perhaps falls in, which is more of an industrial, light industrial use zone, where I think those cultivation and manufacturing belong.
So these are the types of licenses, and then these are the types of businesses that can be licensed and that we can regulate. So there's a slight difference between them, and it gets sort of fuzzy because they're very similar, but the
Right,
law
so
does draw out a distinction.
Based on the words alone, I would say number 1 belongs in the office zone for now, and 2, 3, and 4 belong in industrial or whatever zone district we have that's industrial. I think there's the North Mill SCI, right? Maybe is most applicable within the city limits. I don't really want to get into regulating times other than what's already in the land use code or business licenses about what times businesses can be open and can't be open, if anything. I think the distance from schools is sort of moot given how small our whole community is. I'm fine with the 1,000 feet. I think that's my primary input. Thanks.
And then John?
Yeah, I just have 2 questions, and the second one might be unnecessary. So it wasn't clear, following up with Sam's line of questioning, are we powerless to zone, say, certain neighborhoods? Or will there always be the ability for a facilitator to do their business in any neighborhood?
No, I think we can zone them to be zone districts. It is more an answer to his question of like, if we don't decide to regulate it, will we see these popping up into residential zones? And my gut response is yes, because there's seems to be a lot of therapists who do sessions out of their house. So not necessarily facilitators, but I could just see that happening. So to keep it out of, say, strictly residential zones, to regulate it into a specific zone would be appropriate.
Right. My opinion is either in the core or maybe out by the hospital or in some other appropriate place, and with making sure that we are indeed 1,000 yards away from the yellow brick, as well as any other privately licensed, any other privately licensed childcare.
And in some ways, we're actually very lucky in that all care centers are located at, in fact, the yellow brick or Wildwood, which is, I don't anticipate, it's not in the core, or, so that should be not too terrible to navigate.
Great, thanks.
My input is that I'm interested in more information, the prohibition in residential neighborhoods. I do think the downtown core office designation would be appropriate. Sarah had mentioned something about medical zoning and where medical offices fall into our zoning, so I'm open to some of those. I do think that there probably should be some local guidelines around this, but I don't have a lot of strong feeling about it, and the reason I say that is because, you know, having a practitioner with a small home office, what have you, it sounds benign enough. But the opportunity for that to be a larger operation in a residential neighborhood is something that would be of concern to me. So parsing out, I think, is maybe not that difficult, but yeah, I have some concerns, and I think some of the language that's in there is adequate, like the 1,000-foot rule and stuff like that. So.
One thing I want to reiterate, this is going to be retail if we don't do that. And your example was perfect. That little, office in the former mudroom in some hotel, that's sort of the best case scenario, not the standard. So if you don't want this to be retail akin to what cannabis today, then I think it's smart to put some guidelines in place. Because people will find a way to make it retail, I guarantee that.
So basically, we'll work with Ben and his office and come up with some regulations, because we do believe the best way would be the zoning process, and we'll come up with our appropriate ordinance to address the comments that you've made. Do it as soon as we can.
Great.
Very good.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
I think that's our agenda item for this evening.
Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much. And thank you for
Even though it does outline a potential suggestion came to us from community development regarding zone districts. So that's a thought to take a look at.
Thank you. All right, with that, that is our agenda for our work session.
Just need to call to order.
So we'll call to order a special meeting, purpose of executive session.
Handle roll call.
Can we have a roll call for attendance, please?
John Doyle,
Here.
Guth,
Yes.
Ward Howenstein,
Yes.
Sam Rose,
Here.
Tory.
Here as well. As a special meeting, this is an opportunity to open up the floor for public comment. If there's anybody that wishes to address city council on any items, please raise a hand, online or in room. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council table.
Mr. Mayor, the council is requested to go into executive session pursuant to CRS section 246402-4F, personnel, specific item of discussion else, the city manager review. Council votes to go into executive session. The executive session will be recorded, and the recording will be maintained by the clerk for a period of not less than 90 days. As always, if council votes to go into executive session will be convened in the meeting room downstairs. Council will not return to these chambers to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. A motion?
I make a motion to go into executive session.
Seconded.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? Could we have a roll call vote for going into executive session, please?
Councilor Doyle,
Yes.
Counselor Guth?
Yes.
Counselor Howenstein?
Yes.
Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Tory?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.